Alright everybody, it's Sunday evening and we're going to do another around the world update. This tank here, my 29 miscellaneous, has really only had one issue going, and it's been going on for about the last week to 10 days, and that is my angelfish right there in the back, who is constipated, and I still have not gotten any movement. I actually haven't fed the tank since yesterday afternoon. I'm trying that approach to just let the tank fast for a little while. Now, it almost looks like he's back there trying to deposit eggs, but that doesn't make any sense because he was the male. Huh, that's interesting. I had a mated pair. It was him and a turquoise female. And then he was in there by himself for several months, and then I added these other two males. So I have heard of fish changing sex before. There's certain fish that'll go, I can't remember the details now. There's some fish that will go from male to female. There's other fish that will go from female to male. I don't know. I'm going to have to look more into this and think more about this, because that certainly looks like egg depositing behavior, and that certainly looks like a pregnant fish. I've even had more than one person suggests that maybe I was just misunderstanding a gravid female for a fish that is constipated, and that is certainly some behavior that certainly looks like a female trying to lay eggs. So that is interesting. Well, make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss any updates on that, because I have been following along with this fish for about the last 10 days. I've given it some Epsom salts baths. I've been giving it a diet of peas and spirulina. I've really been trying to get this fish to move its bowels, because I've been under the impression that it is constipated. But we will have to see how things turn out. It still could be, for all I know, it's just rubbing its vent on something because it's in pain. I don't know. I don't know what kind of behavior I'm looking at right now. I've never seen anything like this before. But that certainly looked to me like it was trying to deposit eggs on the filter intake there. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see what happens. So that's all that's going on in my 29, although that was kind of exciting, and we learned something new right while we were starting to just go over my constipated fish. My Gourami tank. The only thing I've got going on in this tank this week is the loss of one of my fish. My little Farlowella Catfish was not doing well the other day, so I did a nice big water change, and it was too late. Did not make it through the night, so I lost my little Farlowella in here. I also lost one of the neons. I had a neon that was swimming funny in here for about 2 weeks, and I was wondering how long it was going to last. And the day after I did the big water change for the Farlowella, well, not the day after I found the Farlowella, I also found the little neon in there, so who knows what that was all about. I'm pretty sure I lost the Farlowella due to my water. I have some sort of odd water. I run it through a water softening system. I'm not going to get into explaining it now, but I have a lot of sodium ions in my water, and some fish can tolerate that and some can't. I don't have hard water, but I do have a lot of dissolved solids in my water. Again, it gets kind of complicated. At some point, I guess here in the near future, I'll do another video about my water. I've done some in the past, but it's been a while since I've talked about my water a lot. But I think that's what did the Farlowella in, and so that is no more. And that's pretty much all that's going on in this tank. I haven't really done anything else that I can think of in the last week or so. My angelfish tank, I did a little more work on getting some more of the gravel out. I took a piece of the Java out of my Gourami tank. I believe I covered this in my last Round the World update. I can't remember how long it's been. I've been so wrapped up in that constipated fish that I've just sort of lost track. But if I haven't covered it already, I did take some Java out of my Gourami tank, and oh well, look at this over here. We got eggs falling everywhere, so I've actually got these two spawning while we're talking. So that's my male albino, and then the mixed veil right there is the female, and she's currently depositing her eggs. So they're spawning again. There's something new for us. This is an exciting round the world update. I was just going to talk about how I put some extra Java fern in there and changed my light bulbs so that it's nice and brightly lit again. I've removed a little more of the gravel. I'm still working on getting the white sand out of there. I'm going to put some dark substrate in there at some point eventually. And that's really all that's going on in this tank, other than I now have more spawning angelfish. My black ghost knifefish tank, nothing has changed on this tank since last we saw it. You can see the glass is starting to get all gunky and covered. The plants are just starting to grow out of control. This temple plant here is just getting so thick and bushy, it's lying across the surface. So this tank's about due for a nice little trimming and water change. Get in there and wipe the glass down. I probably ought to get in there and clean the filter out too. It's been quite a while since I've done the filter. But nothing really going on in that tank, not even really much to look at in this case, because it's kind of hard to see through the grimy glass. So moving right along. My new native tank. Let's see where to start. I added some plants. The taller plants you can see there is Rotala. It's already getting knocked loose and uprooted. I've replanted it a couple times, and you can see I got a bunch more floating already. I've got some stubby jungle val. There's one little patch of it. I put another patch down on the end, and there is another patch floating up here because it keeps getting knocked loose. I have added a silver molly and a Dalmatian molly to help me keep on top of all the algae that's growing in this tank, and they're doing a fine job. But I also added a crayfish. I had the opportunity the other day to pull one of my crayfish out of my crayfish tank, which we will get to eventually, and I put it in here just because it was convenient. I had it, and while I put it back in the crayfish tank, I knew it was going in here eventually. So now that I've done that, I really don't want to see my mollies get munched on, and it's a possibility. In fact, over time, it's probably a probability that they will get munched on by one of these crayfish. I still have the other one to get over here, but I have not done that yet. So eventually there's going to be at least 2 crayfish in here, and then by springtime there's going to be more than that. So the mollies need to come out. The minnows are probably going to get munched on. As bad as it sounds, I'm really kind of hoping that Mayan cichlid or the tilapia, I really hope the crayfish gets one of them or both of them, because they're going to have to come out of here as well. When I put them in the tank, don't know if this was in my last video or not, but one of my viewers sent me a bunch of fish and some shrimp and some plants, and I thought the fish were sunfish, little baby sunfish, and I threw them in there before I had a really good chance to look at them, only to find out that both of those that we were just looking at are invasive species to North America. They're not native at all. So I need to get them out and get them somewhere. The tilapia is native to West Africa, so I thought about putting it in my 125, which is sort of an African themed tank, but I found out that it's an aggressive fish and it gets to be about 13 inches, so that would only be a matter of time before it would be wrecking that tank, and I'd have to get it out anyway. It's already a pretty heavily stocked tank. A 13-inch aggressive fish in there is not going to work, so there's no point in even putting it in there just to remove it again. So either these guys are getting taken out in the spring when I can go out and go fishing, and I can start stocking it up with some local fish, or the crayfish will get them. One way or the other, the Mayan cichlid and the tilapia are coming out. I do have a third mystery fish in here. I've been looking everywhere for him and I still do not see him. This, I believe, is the little Mayan cichlid. Yeah, that's the little Mayan cichlid. Is that him right there? That was him right there. We just missed him behind that black molly. There he is. I think, I'm not sure yet, but I think that might be what is called a rock bass or a red eye. If that's the case, that is in fact a native fish, and I will be able to keep it in this tank. I've never actually had it come swim out this far before with me standing right here, so hopefully he'll turn sideways a little bit and we'll be able to get a better look at his side. His markings could be a rock bass. His fins and his shape definitely look like a rock bass, but his eyes are not really red. They're just sort of orange, so I don't know. A lot of fish are really, really different looking when they're juveniles compared to when they're adults. So I don't know, but this tank has got a lot of work left to be done to it. I really don't want to keep adding stuff in there that I have to pull back out. I hate trying to catch fish in tanks, especially a tank like this. The mollies might not be too bad, but I dread trying to catch that tilapia and that other cichlid. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, that's about all that's going on in this tank. My snail tank has some ghost shrimp in it now, once again thanks to my viewer. And eventually I'm going to get in there and start pulling some of them out. More of them are going to go back into the native tank we were just looking at. And I'm also going to put some of them in my brackish tank that we will get to in a minute. And we'll see if some of them live. And if not, then my puffer will have some nice activity, some forage, running around chasing some ghost shrimp in there. Will be good for him. I think at some point, if anybody's interested, let me know. I will do a little video about this snail tank and what I do to maintain it. Which is really about nothing. But I can do a video talking about the nothing I do to it. There's a ghost shrimp swimming around right there. And just, my success or failures or whatever with this tank. Just whatever. It's just a tank I never talk about. So if anybody's interested in how I breed my snails for my puffer, let me know. And we can, do a little video talking about that. My T-bar gudgeon tank. Nothing really going on in here. I haven't done anything new. I've made a few sort of decisions about what I'm going to be doing in here, but I haven't actually done anything. You can see that rubber lip pleco on the back of the tank and how clean this tank has become now that I have one in here. On that note, since nothing's really going on in this tank, we can look at it for a moment. I will put a link in right here to the tank in my office. If anybody has seen any of that video where I have put a rubber lip pleco in a 10-gallon tank in my office that was filled with blackbeard algae. I mean, it was covered with blackbeard algae. And in the last 20 days or so, one rubber lip pleco has devoured the algae in that tank and has made it look so clean. It's unbelievable. It's really worth watching, especially if you're one of those people that is skeptical about how effective a rubber lip pleco is at keeping your tank clean. I think they're a must-have tank cleaner unless you've got a tank that they're not suited for, or you've got like my native tank. Obviously I'm not going to put a rubber lip pleco in my native tank. I'm not going to put a rubber lip pleco in my brackish tank. If you've got like an African hard water tank or something, you can't use a rubber lip pleco. But if you've got a tank that needs an algae cleaner, or a glass scraper and makes everything look nice and shiny and gets all that film off of everything, you can't go wrong with a rubber lip pleco. I know some people say you can, but I've never ever had a problem with them. They just devour the film in your tank. They'll keep it sparkling clean. So, moving on to my 125. Let's go stand over here so we can get a look at the whole tank. Nothing really going on that I can think of in this tank. I did do a water change recently. I trimmed up some of the plants a little more. I thinned out some of the babies. Oh, I did do one thing. I took one of the plants that used to be planted over here, sort of at the base of that rock in between the two branches of wood, and I moved it to this end where it would get better lighting. And I also took the two lights that I have on the top here. These are actually just these little cheap, they start out as clamp lights, but you can just unscrew the clamp easy enough, and you can either hang it by the cord, or you can do what I do and simply set it down, and that has a little CFL bulb in it. I put a brand new 100-watt equivalent, which I believe is 26 actual watts, but it makes the brightness of a 100-watt equivalent of an incandescent bulb. So it's a pretty bright bulb compared to what I had in there before. I had 60-watt equivalents in there, which I believe are only 13-watt bulbs. So it's a lot brighter, and I also was able to put, now that I've got the new tubes in there, the new, CFLs, it will do much better for my plant growth. So hopefully that red sword in there, that red melon sword, I believe that's a red melon sword, that I did have planted over here, will be able to get much more light rather than being sort of trapped underneath of all of this mass and not really getting much light at all. So hopefully we'll see some nice bright red melon sword growing up here in the near future. I've also done the same thing down here. I've got another one of those dome lights on this end, and I did another new CFL in this end too, to really brighten that tank up and really make all the colors on the fish pop. Other than that, not a lot going on. My brackish tank, likewise, nothing really going on. I really need to do a water change in this tank. This is one of the tanks I'm just bad with doing water changes, and I don't know why. You know, mixing up, I always say I've got to mix up the water, and it's not something I can just do with my sink water. You know, I got well water, and I run it through a system, so I can just run water right in from my tap. I don't have to condition it or anything. But with brackish water, I have to make up a batch of brackish water, and I have to keep a reservoir of water. It's not... You can do it, but it's not recommended to make a batch of water and then use it. You should never mix the water directly in your tank or mix the salts directly in your tank. At the very least, mix it up in a bucket. If you're in a pinch and you've really got to do a water change and you want to do another batch of brackish water in a bucket and then use it in the tank, I've done it. But you should give it overnight. At minimum, give it like 4 or 5 hours for all the chemistry to finish doing its thing and taking place. And then you've got your true brackish water, and then you can do your water change. But the long and short of it is that it's not really hard to just mix up a batch of salt water or brackish water and just let it sit in a bucket. And when I need it, I've got a bucket of water. But I do a water change, and then I set the bucket down. You know, after I'm done, I've got an empty bucket. And instead of going in and just filling it back up so it's ready again, I always set it down and go, oh, I'll get to that later. And if you know me, later can be weeks sometimes. Just day after day slips by and I don't even realize it. And that's exactly what's happening. I'm looking at this tank now, and I can sit here and see how tea-stained that water is. And, you know, it's been, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks since I've done a water change on this tank. So that's due. You know, it's ready. I just got to get around to doing it. So hopefully maybe we'll do a little before and after video. We can talk a little more about the tannins or something. I don't know. We'll do something with this tank soon. My quarantine tank is still just ticking over, nothing going on in here. I've still got some Rasbora hets in there. I really don't know whether or not I have a surviving coolie loach in there. In theory, there should be one coolie loach still in there, but I've not seen him since, so I've not even bothered to get in there and lift anything up to see if it comes swimming out. I don't really care. If it's alive, it's alive. If it's not, it's not. You know, me finding out isn't going to be able to change anything. So tank's just ticking over. I'm just leaving him in quarantine for a few more weeks. If I need this tank for something, I suppose I could always pull those Rasbora hets out or throw something else in there with them or something. I don't know. Perhaps those 2 mollies. I don't really have any place to put those mollies that are currently in my native tank, so perhaps they might wind up in this tank or something just for a place to keep them. Other than that, nothing really going on there. My crayfish tank. I already explained that one of the crayfish in this tank has been moved and is now in the native tank. The other one will be coming out soon. I don't know what I want to do with this tank, though. It's in a bad position because it sits right here in front of our storage closet. We don't really use this closet very much, but it does have stuff in there that we need from time to time. So if I ever need to get to any of it, I'm going to have to move this whole table or tank or whatever. So it's always been temporary. I've never intended this to be a tank that was going to last, but I find myself kind of attached to it. I've had it here for so long. I really enjoy it. I like looking at it. I like watching the crayfish crawl around in it. Now, I'll grant you, once the crayfish are no longer in here, there won't be any crayfish to watch and enjoy walking around. But I don't know. We'll see. I can always leave it here. If I ever have to move it, I can. But if there's no need to move it because the closet doesn't need to be open, I can always just let it sit and just have plants growing in it for the time being. And then in the spring, we could throw some minnows in there, or who knows. I don't know. But I've grown attached to this tank to some degree, and I'm not ready to just shut it all down yet, even if I do pull the crayfish out of there, which I intend to do very shortly. He's going to end up over in the new tank. But first, I want to worry about those mollies. Once they're safely out of there, I'll worry about getting this bigger crayfish that's still in there out. And that brings us all the way around the world. We're back to my 29 miscellaneous. I will definitely keep my eye on this fish. That vent just does not look normal in any way to me. That does not look like a female that's ready to lay eggs or ovipositor or anything like that. That just looks strange. That behavior is also strange. So as I said before, go ahead and subscribe. That way you won't miss any of the updates I have on this tank or anything else. Again, this is my 29 miscellaneous, and you don't want to miss any updates. You find out what's going on with that sick angelfish. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you real soon on the next one.